The alien ship hovered just above Earth's atmosphere, its sleek and silver exterior reflecting the light of the distant sun as it surveyed the planet below. Inside, a team of highly advanced beings from the Zither Dominion, a race known for their precision and intellect, gathered in the control room. These beings were accustomed to traveling across galaxies, encountering all manner of strange and dangerous life forms. However, Earth was proving to be a challenge unlike any they had faced before. "Commander Zal," a high-pitched voice called from the back of the room. The voice belonged to Nrix, a young and eager Zither scientist. "Are you sure about this mission? I've read the reports, but there's something strange about Earth's creatures. Nothing like anything we've seen before." Commander Zal, the leader of this mission, narrowed his dark eyes. His species' sharp features made them look almost predatory, yet there was a calm wisdom in his gaze. "We've seen dangerous creatures before, Nrix," he replied, his voice as cold as metal. "This planet is teeming with life, and if we are to learn its secrets, we must first understand the dangers." Nrix's antennae twitched nervously. "But the humans, they're animals, they're different. They don't make sense. I've studied their behaviors. Their evolutionary paths are erratic, unpredictable. We could be walking into a trap." Zal's lips curled into something resembling a smile. "That is exactly why we are here. To study their most dangerous creatures. They have survived for millennia, adapting in ways that even our own species has yet to fully understand. That is our mission. We need to understand how they've done it. To learn, to conquer." Zal turned his gaze to the large viewport, where Earth stretched out in all its blue and green glory. Below, the vast oceans swirled with the endless ebb and flow of water. The continents lay sprawling, dotted with cities and forests. But it was the creatures, those strange, resilient, and dangerous creatures, that had drawn the Zither here. They had heard whispers from other alien races about Earth's natural predators, the beasts that had survived and evolved against all odds, from the deadliest predators in the wild to the diseases that only seemed to make humans stronger. These creatures were unlike anything the Zither had encountered. "We will land on the surface tomorrow," Zal continued, "and we will begin our observations. This mission could provide us with the key to unlocking new technologies, new strategies for survival. Do not underestimate Earth's creatures, Nrix. But do not fear them either." Nrix nodded, still unconvinced. "What exactly are we looking for?" Zal's gaze softened slightly. "Anything that might give us insight into their resilience. We have identified several species that could be of interest, including one known as the human. They have a peculiar quality that intrigues us." The room fell silent for a moment as Nrix processed the commander's words. "Humans? The hairless, weak creatures. They're nothing compared to some of the other life forms on this planet." Zal's expression remained unreadable, but his voice took on a weight that made the room feel smaller. "You underestimate them, Nrix. Their strength lies in their adaptability. They have faced countless challenges, and yet, they thrive. And in their own way, they are the most dangerous." The next day, the Zither ship descended silently over a dense jungle, the ship's advanced sensors scanning for any signs of life. The creatures they had encountered from orbit seemed harmless enough, small, skittering insects and birds flitting about. But the Zither knew better than to judge a planet by its surface alone. They had studied Earth for months, but the true test would be what lay beneath. Zal's team disembarked into the humid jungle, their suits designed to withstand the harsh conditions of alien environments. They moved swiftly, their senses heightened, scanning every rustle of the foliage. The team consisted of 4 Zither, each specialized in different areas of alien biology, weaponry, and analysis. Commander Zal was the strategist and leader, his mind always calculating every potential outcome. Nrix, the scientist, was there to collect data, eager to find something new. Vesk was the military expert, carrying an array of weapons designed for close combat, and Zaz, the tech specialist, was tasked with setting up a communication grid for the team. As they ventured deeper into the jungle, Nrix was the first to notice something unusual. "Commander, look at this," she called out, kneeling by a strange, thick vine. It appeared to be moving, twitching as though it had a life of its own. Zal approached, his eyes scanning the vine with intense focus. It's not a plant. Look at the coloration of the leaves, these are sentient. They're alive. Nrix looked at him in disbelief. A living vine? This is absurd. How does that even work? Zal's voice lowered. This is what Earth does. It adapts in ways that break all logic. We need to be careful. These vines could be a predator, luring in prey with their appearance. Suddenly, without warning, the vine lashed out, wrapping itself around Nrix's ankle with lightning speed. She gasped in surprise, attempting to free herself, but the more she struggled, the tighter the vine became. Vesk! Zal barked, get her out. Vesk didn't hesitate. He moved quickly, pulling out a sleek plasma cutter from his belt and severing the vine with a single strike. The vine recoiled, retreating back into the jungle as if it had never been there. Nrix fell to the ground, gasping for air, her heart pounding. That was a living vine, she said breathlessly. It nearly took me. Zal knelt beside her. You should have been more cautious. This is Earth, Nrix. Every corner holds a predator, and nothing is ever as it seems. The rest of the team stood watch, their weapons at the ready, eyes darting between the shifting shadows of the trees. The jungle was eerily silent now, and they knew that there would be no further warnings. Whatever dangers this world had, they would not announce themselves with fanfare. Nrix's hand trembled as she pushed herself to her feet, looking around in a mix of awe and fear. I think I understand now. Earth's creatures don't just survive, they're designed to attack, to kill, to thrive in chaos. We're not dealing with just biology, we're facing a world built on survival instinct. Zal nodded. Exactly. The humans are the apex here, not because they are the strongest, but because they are the most adaptable. They learn. They grow. They fight. And above all, they survive. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a piercing scream in the distance, a human scream. That came from over there, Vesk said, pointing toward the thick trees. Are we going to investigate? Zal hesitated, his calculating mind weighing the options. The scream could mean danger, or it could mean a chance to observe a creature in action. Either way, it was an opportunity they couldn't afford to ignore. Yes, Zal said. We investigate. And stay alert. We are the hunters now. They moved as one, silently, through the dense foliage, each step bringing them closer to the source of the scream. It was time to see just how dangerous Earth's creatures could be, and how dangerous the humans themselves truly were. The thick jungle air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying plant matter, as the Zyther team moved in stealth, their footsteps muffled by the dense underbrush. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of the leaves, set their senses on edge. The scream they had heard earlier still echoed in their minds, an eerie reminder of the dangers that lay just beyond the tree line. Zal led the group, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings for any sign of movement, while the rest of the team followed in silence, their weapons drawn and their minds focused. Nrix, still rattled by her encounter with the vine, was noticeably more cautious now, her steps lighter, her senses more attuned to the environment. Commander, Nrix whispered, the scream. It sounded like a human. What if it's a trap? What if this is some kind of bait to lure us in? Zal's eyes narrowed, his gaze fixed on a narrow trail cutting through the trees ahead. If it is a trap, we'll handle it. But if it's a human in danger, we must act quickly. We don't know if the creature that made that scream is a predator or if it's part of a larger hunt. Vesk, always eager for action, grunted impatiently. Let's hope it's not just a distraction. We've already wasted too much time here. Every minute we stay is a minute we give these creatures to gain the upper hand. Zal held up a hand, signaling for them to halt. Patience, Vesk. The moment we make a mistake here, we risk everything. Let's proceed with caution. The jungle seemed to close in around them as they crept forward, every noise amplified in the thick humidity of the forest. Zaz, the tech specialist, was busy configuring a small scanning device. His quiet mutterings were barely audible, but they were focused on keeping their technology operational and communicating with the ship hovering silently overhead, awaiting further instructions. The Zyther were known for their technological prowess, and Zaz's gadgets would prove invaluable, assuming they could stay functional in this hostile environment. As they moved deeper into the jungle, the dense foliage grew thicker, the trees taller, and the shadows longer. The air was thick with a tension that seemed to permeate every leaf, every breeze. Something was wrong. Without warning, the ground trembled beneath their feet, the vibrations shaking through the underbrush. The trees began to sway violently, and the air was suddenly filled with a loud, guttural roar that rattled through their bones. The scream from before was forgotten, replaced by the sound of something far worse. Zal raised a fist to stop the team. "Stay still," he whispered harshly, his mind racing. "This is no ordinary creature. It's massive." Nrix's heart raced as the earth beneath them shook again. "What is that thing?" "It sounds like a giant." "Not just a giant," Zal murmured. "A predator. Earth's predators are not all as they seem. It might be a type of titan, something that rules over this land." The trees ahead of them cracked as something enormous pushed through, a hulking form that seemed to appear out of nowhere. It was as if the jungle itself had given birth to it, and it moved with terrifying speed. The creature was huge, easily 5 times the size of any human, and its body was covered in thick, armored scales that reflected the sunlight like jagged shards of stone. Its eyes glowed an eerie red, and its mouth opened in a snarl, revealing rows of sharp, menacing teeth. The Zyther instinctively raised their weapons, but Zal held out a hand, stopping them. His mind worked quickly, analyzing the creature's movements, its strength. This was no simple beast. It was an apex predator, built to dominate. "Don't engage," Zal ordered. "It's too dangerous. We need to assess the situation first." But it was too late. The creature let out another deafening roar, a sound that rattled the bones of everyone present. Its massive tail whipped through the trees, sending branches flying as it advanced toward them. The ground shook as it moved, and the jungle around them seemed to bend and twist in reaction to its power. Vesk raised his plasma rifle, aiming at the creature's massive head. "We can't just sit here and wait for it to crush us, Commander," he snarled, his voice full of adrenaline. Zal's eyes remained focused. "We will not engage directly. Not yet. We need to outsmart it." "Outsmart it?" Nrix gasped. "How? This thing's huge. We can't outrun it, and we're not equipped to take it down." Zal was already scanning the surroundings, his mind working at full speed. He turned to Zaz, who was still fiddling with his equipment, his eyes flicking nervously toward the beast. "Zaz, can you get a signal out to the ship? We need aerial support, now." Zaz nodded rapidly, fingers flying over his device. "Trying, it's hard with all the interference from the creature's movements. But I think I can." Before he could finish, the creature charged, its massive claws tearing through the ground as it lunged at the group. The Zyther scattered, diving into the underbrush as the beast's tail swiped through the air, narrowly missing Vesk, who rolled to the side with an agile motion. "Move!" Zal shouted. "Split up. Use the environment." The Zyther scattered in different directions, weaving through the dense jungle as the creature roared in frustration. It was quick, far quicker than any of them had anticipated, and it began tearing through the trees, systematically searching for the Zyther team. Its red eyes glowed with an unnerving intelligence, as though it knew they were there, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Nrix's heart pounded in her chest as she darted behind a thick tree, using her sharp senses to track the creature's movements. "It's not just attacking randomly," she muttered to herself. "It's hunting. It knows we're here. It's testing us." Zala's voice crackled through their communication earpieces. "Stay calm. We cannot afford to panic. Remember what we know of Earth's predators, they are not mindless. They have patterns, weaknesses. We need to find that weakness. Vesk, always the brute force, fired a few rounds from his plasma rifle at the creature, but the energy bolts barely seemed to faze it. The creature's thick armor absorbed the blasts like they were nothing. "I'll draw it away," Vesk shouted, charging forward with reckless determination. The creature's attention snapped toward him, and with a roar, it turned to pursue him, its massive form crashing through the trees. Vesk's movements were fast, but not fast enough to outpace the creature for long. "Vesk!" Zal shouted, but the military expert was already too far ahead, weaving through the trees in an attempt to lead the creature away from the others. "Do not engage directly," Zal commanded, but his voice was lost in the distance. Nrix, still in hiding, cursed under her breath. "We need to help him." "No," Zal snapped. "We stick to the plan. We stay hidden, observe, and find a way to outwit this beast." But the plan was quickly falling apart. The jungle, once filled with the sounds of life, was now dominated by the thundering steps of the creature as it stomped closer to Vesk, who was weaving through the jungle like a phantom, but the creature was relentless. It was only a matter of time before it caught up. Zala's mind raced. What could they do? How could they survive this? How could they outsmart a creature that seemed built for destruction? Then, something unusual happened. In the chaos, there was a sudden flicker, a glint of movement in the distance. It was fast, too fast to be human. Another predator? Or something else entirely? Zala's eyes narrowed as he looked through the trees, trying to make sense of the new threat. Whatever it was about to change the balance of the jungle. And they needed to figure out how to turn it to their advantage. "Stay sharp," Zal said, his voice low and calculating. "Something else is out there. And it might just be our way out." The creature's massive form loomed ahead, its every movement causing the jungle to tremble. It had abandoned its pursuit of Vesk for the moment, but the sound of its heavy footfalls echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Zala's team remained scattered through the thick jungle, their minds racing as the situation spiraled further out of control. The stakes had risen beyond their calculations. Vesk, ever the soldier, was still on the move, his plasma rifle held tightly in his hand. He was darting through the underbrush, making sharp turns and hiding behind fallen trees, trying to keep the creature off his trail. Every now and then, he would stop to fire a few shots, hoping to distract the creature long enough to gain a few more steps ahead. But the beast was relentless, its deep red eyes focused solely on him. Zal remained still, crouching behind a large rock, his sharp eyes scanning the jungle. "Zaz, can you get a signal to the ship? We need more firepower, now," he whispered into his communicator. Zaz's voice crackled in his earpiece. "I'm working on it, Commander. There's too much interference from the creature. It's disrupting the signal. We might be on our own here." Nrix, still hiding behind a thick tree trunk, tried to suppress her panic. "Commander," she called out softly. "What if we can't outsmart it? What if it's too powerful?" Zala's expression hardened. He had always prided himself on his ability to think through impossible situations, but even he felt the weight of the danger they were facing. The creature was too fast, too strong, and too intelligent to be taken lightly. The odds were stacking against them. "We cannot allow panic to cloud our judgment," Nrix, Zal replied. "Fear is the greatest enemy. If we let it take hold, we lose. We have faced worse odds before. Trust in the plan." The jungle around them seemed to grow darker as the creature's roars echoed closer. Then, just as Zal was about to signal for them to regroup, a sudden disturbance in the foliage caught his eye. A flicker of movement, too fast to be a normal animal, too calculated to be a wild creature. Without warning, a massive shape emerged from the trees, its sleek body a blur of speed and power. It was a creature unlike anything they had seen before, its fur black as night, its eyes gleaming with a predatory intelligence. Its limbs were long and muscular, and its body was covered in dark, glistening scales that reflected the sun's dying light. But it wasn't the creature's appearance that struck fear into the Zither. It was its presence, the palpable sense that it was not just another predator in the jungle, but something that had come to assert dominance over everything. The new creature, moving faster than the beast that had been chasing Vesk, was directly in the path of the Scyther's adversary. It bared its teeth, its eyes glowing with a predatory gleam, and with a deafening roar, it lunged at the massive creature that had been stalking Vesk. Zala's mind raced. A confrontation between two apex predators, this was not part of the plan, but it might be their only hope. The Scyther had always known that survival was not just about strength, it was about adaptability, and using whatever opportunities the environment provided. Vesk! Zal barked through his communicator. The creature is distracted. Move! Get to cover! Vesk, panting from the exertion, didn't hesitate. He dropped to the ground, rolling into a small clearing as the massive creature's attention shifted, following the new threat. Vesk immediately darted behind a fallen tree, his plasma rifle ready, but not firing. He knew better than to draw attention to himself just yet. Meanwhile, the battle between the two predators unfolded before Zala's eyes. The massive creature roared again, its body twisting as it tried to defend itself against the new challenger. The battle was brutal, massive claws slashing, teeth gnashing, and tails swinging with force. The jungle seemed to tremble under the weight of the conflict, trees crashing to the ground as the beasts tore through the landscape. Nrix, watching the clash in horror, turned to Zal. What are we supposed to do? The creature's going to tear this entire jungle apart. We're sitting ducks. Zal didn't take his eyes off the battle. The chaos works to our advantage. These creatures are too focused on each other. We move now, while their attention is diverted. But we need to be quick. He turned to Zaz. Can you send a signal yet? Zaz's voice was strained. It's still too much interference, Commander. But I think I can send a short-range transmission. It won't be enough to get us back up, but it might help us track the creature's movements. Do it, Zal ordered, already formulating the next step. Nrix, Zaz, you'll need to assist me in tracking the creature's weak points. The key to winning this is using its vulnerabilities. Nrix was still shaken, but her scientific mind was racing. The creature's scales are nearly impenetrable, but there are gaps around its joints, its underbelly. If we can get close enough, we can exploit those gaps with precision strikes. Zal's eyes flicked to the battle between the two titans. He calculated the best course of action. The creature's attention was completely consumed by the fight, and if they were quick, they could get close enough to use their weapons without being noticed. Vesk, Zal whispered into his communicator, his voice calm despite the chaos. We're going to need you to keep the creature distracted for a few more moments. Zaz, Nrix, we're going in. When the time comes, strike its weak points. Vesk's voice crackled back through the earpiece, breathing heavily but determined. Understood. I'll keep it busy. Just make sure you don't take too long. The Scyther team moved with a newfound urgency. Every step was calculated, each movement deliberate, as they navigated the jungle towards the center of the battle. The sounds of clashing titans reverberated through the air, drowning out everything else as the Scyther closed the distance. The giant predator was now engaged in a vicious struggle with the new creature, their roars mixing with the sound of cracking trees. Zala's mind was a whirlwind of calculations. The creatures were evenly matched, both possessing incredible strength, but Zal knew that with the right strike, they could turn the tide. The Scyther had long since learned to observe, to watch for the smallest of weaknesses, something the humans had done to perfection over centuries. And now, they would use the same adaptability that had served the humans so well. The team advanced, their weapons raised, their movements fluid and silent. The jungle felt alive with tension, as though even the trees were holding their breath, waiting for the decisive moment. Then, in a flash of speed, the massive creature let out a final, blood-curdling scream as it lunged at the new challenger, exposing its vulnerable side. It was in that exact moment that Zal signaled. Now! Zaz's weapon fired first, a precision blast that hit the creature's underbelly, just beneath the ribcage. It howled in pain, staggering backward. Nrix followed suit, launching a targeted strike at the base of the creature's neck. The beast roared again, but the damage had been done. The massive creature fell, its body crumpling to the ground as the new predator delivered the final blow. The jungle fell silent for a moment, save for the heavy breathing of the surviving creature and the quiet footsteps of the Scyther team, who had taken their first real step in defeating Earth's deadliest inhabitants. But even as the dust settled, Zal knew they were not out of danger. The new creature, now victorious, turned its glowing eyes toward the Scyther, its predatory gaze locking onto their position. "Stay ready," Zal whispered. "The battle may be over for one, but it's far from finished for us." And with that, they prepared for the next phase of the battle, knowing that in this jungle, only the adaptable would survive. The jungle was eerily quiet. The sounds of roaring creatures, crashing trees, and the earth-shaking tremors from their battle had faded into a tense stillness. The massive predator that had pursued them was now down, its body crumpled in the undergrowth, defeated by the new creature that stood ominously over it. Its dark, sleek form loomed like a shadow in the fading light, its eyes glowing with an unsettling intelligence as it turned its gaze toward the Scyther team. Zal stood motionless, his weapon still trained on the new creature, his mind racing through possibilities. Their survival had come down to this precise moment when two titans had clashed, and the Scyther had, by sheer luck and quick thinking, managed to exploit the chaos. But now, they were faced with a new, unknown threat. The creature, this new apex predator, stared at them for what felt like an eternity. Its predatory instincts were undeniable, and its gaze was sharp, calculating. It had tasted victory. It had seen the Scyther's capabilities. Would it recognize them as worthy adversaries, or would it simply see them as another target to be hunted? Zal motioned for the team to hold their position. "Stay still. We don't know its next move." The creature did not advance. Instead, it simply observed them, its intense eyes scanning each member of the Scyther team with what seemed like an unnatural awareness. It tilted its head slightly, as if sizing them up, considering them in the same way it had considered its previous opponent. Nrix, still shaken from the encounter, whispered to Zal. "What's it waiting for? Is it going to attack? It doesn't seem afraid of us." Zal's eyes never left the creature. "It's testing us. It's trying to determine if we're a threat or just prey." A shiver ran down Nrix's spine. That's not reassuring. Vesk, who had recovered from his earlier evasion and was now crouched behind a thick tree, offered a suggestion. "What if we try to communicate? Some species have a strange way of showing dominance. Maybe we can use that to our advantage." The suggestion hung in the air, but Zal was silent, considering the possibility. Communication with such a creature seemed impossible. But then again, they had already done the impossible. They had survived a battle with one of Earth's deadliest apex predators. Perhaps they could find a way to turn this situation to their advantage. "Zaz," Zal said, his voice low but steady, "can you access any data on Earth's predators? Perhaps there's a pattern or behavior we can exploit." Zaz quickly fiddled with his device, his fingers flying over the small control panel. "I'm pulling up data now, Commander. But Earth's creatures are unpredictable. They're not as easily classified as ours back home. This predator doesn't seem to have the same instincts as others I've studied. It's more intelligent." Zal's thoughts raced. Then we treat it like an intelligent being. Perhaps we've been wrong all along, assuming Earth's predators are mindless creatures. What if this one understands us? His words hung in the air, a bold idea in the face of uncertainty. They had no way of knowing what kind of intelligence this new predator possessed, but Zal had seen enough in his time as a commander to know that the key to survival often lay in understanding the unknown, adapting to it, and finding a way to coexist, if only for a moment. He stepped forward slowly, signaling the others to stay back. The jungle felt even quieter now, as though it, too, was waiting for the next move. The creature's glowing eyes followed Zal's every movement. He didn't draw his weapon. He didn't make any threatening gestures. Instead, he stood tall and firm, his posture commanding but non-aggressive. The silence stretched on as the two sides assessed one another. After what seemed like an eternity, the creature took a slow step forward, its claws tapping gently against the ground. The air seemed to hum with anticipation as the gap between the two sides closed. Then, just as Zal thought he might be forced to act, the creature did something unexpected. It lowered its head slightly, its eyes softening just enough for Zal to perceive a shift, an acknowledgement. The tension in the air seemed to dissipate, and Zal breathed a small sigh of relief. "We've been mistaken," Zal muttered, barely audible. "This creature isn't attacking us. It's studying us. Testing us. It doesn't see us as prey." Nrix, who had been watching the exchange closely, blinked in disbelief. "So, what now? Do we trust it?" Zal didn't answer immediately. He couldn't afford to make a decision too quickly. The creature had shown no overt aggression, but neither had it given any indication of friendship or alliance. This was a creature that had ruled this jungle for reasons the Scyther couldn't fully comprehend. Trust wasn't the right word. This was about survival. It was about understanding the balance of power in this strange, hostile world and respecting the unspoken rules that governed it. "We wait," Zal said simply. "We observe. And we adapt." As the creature studied them, Zal's mind shifted gears. He began to think about the bigger picture. Their mission on Earth had been to study and learn from the planet's creatures, to understand the potential threats and determine how they could integrate Earth into the larger galactic community. But what they had found here was not a planet full of simple, mindless creatures. Earth's wildlife was complex, unpredictable, and alive with intelligence, far beyond what they had expected. It had taken every ounce of their skill and ingenuity to survive this far. The Scyther were known for their resourcefulness, their adaptability. They weren't just conquerors or observers, they were survivors. And they had learned something important from this encounter. It wasn't just about force. It wasn't just about technology or weapons. It was about knowing when to strike, when to retreat, and, most importantly, when to respect the environment you were in and the creatures you shared it with. The creature before them seemed to understand this on some level. It wasn't interested in them as prey anymore. It was assessing them as equals, another species trying to survive in the same jungle. It was a reminder that the universe was full of life forms who had learned to navigate the complexities of their environments, just as the Scyther had. Zal's posture softened, just slightly, as he allowed himself a moment of reflection. They had made it through, not just by fighting, but by understanding. Earth was a world that held dangers beyond their wildest imaginations, but it also held opportunities to learn, to grow, and to adapt. Finally, the creature turned its back on them, walking slowly back into the dense jungle. It wasn't retreating in fear, it was simply moving on, as if it had determined that the Scyther were no longer a threat. The Scyther team stood frozen for a moment, watching the creature disappear into the underbrush, until all that remained was the rustling of the leaves and the distant calls of other animals. Zal exhaled slowly, the weight of the moment lifting from his shoulders. He turned to his team. "We survived," he said, his voice firm but tinged with a note of respect. "And we learned something valuable today." Nrix, her eyes still wide from the encounter, nodded slowly. "I didn't expect that. I thought we were done for." "We were," Vesk said gruffly, emerging from behind the tree where he had been hiding. "But we kept our heads. And in the end, that's what made the difference." Zal gave him a rare, approving glance. "Exactly. We didn't just fight. We adapted. And that's what will keep us alive here. Not strength. Not firepower. Adaptability." As the team moved to regroup, Zal cast one last glance at the jungle around them. It was a dangerous place, full of predators and mysteries, but for the first time since they'd arrived, he felt a strange sense of connection to it. They had not conquered Earth's deadliest creatures, they had learned to survive alongside them. The Scyther were survivors. And this world, for all its danger, was now theirs to understand. The universe was full of unknowns, and Earth had just proven to be one of the most complex and fascinating they had encountered. They had been tested, and they had passed. In the end, that was the true lesson. With renewed resolve, Zal motioned for his team to move forward. We've learned much today. But our mission isn't over. Let's finish what we came here to do. And with that, they disappeared into the jungle, ready for whatever Earth might throw at them next.